Hi, I'm Kez Vicario Robinson. I use they, them pronouns, and I am a comedian and an actor. I started transitioning about 4 years ago now, and it was kind of a long journey, and now I feel the best I've ever felt. Last week I was 1 year on testosterone. As of today that we're filming, I am 1 month away from getting top surgery. And when I first came out as non-binary, I didn't really think I wanted either of these things, like medical transitioning stuff, but now I feel a lot better about both of them, and I actually actively am realizing that I want both of these things. And for a long time, I wasn't sure what I wanted and what my transition goals kind of were, but I feel good about where I am now. And I realized I was non-binary after I had cut all my hair off. After I had, when I was, I think, 19 or 20. And I was very, very femme for all my high school years. And I had really long hair, and I cut off 16 inches of hair. And I started dressing a lot more masculine. And I was like, okay, I'm a butch. Like, I like this identity. I feel like it came out of nowhere. Like, I really, truly don't know why that latched on to me and why I latched on to it. But I read this book, Persistence, Always Butch and Femme. And in that book, a person, it's kind of like a book of short essays, kind of, or like people talking about their gender and their butch identities and their femme identities. And in that book, I found someone describing how they felt genderqueer and describing that word. And that was like the moment when I kind of realized that I was non-binary, was reading that word and being like, oh my god, okay, that's me. Genderqueer, that is me. That is exactly it. Growing up, I was homeschooled until I was in grade 9. That was a really great experience. More like unschooling, so it was just very like free from gender roles, and it was really great. And I dressed a lot more masculine and androgynous when I was a kid, and I really didn't like traditionally feminine things. I specifically remember just really not liking dolls for a long time and being very adamant that I didn't like dolls and I didn't like the color pink. Which was hard to unlearn as well, because I do actually like both those things. So both those things are great. But when I started going to high school, and right before high school, I think as well, I really liked being feminine, and I dressed exactly like Rachel Berry from the TV show Glee throughout my entire high school experience. That's why I always tell people to just kind of get them in the brain, the headspace of what I was like in high school. A really big theater kid. I really liked being on stage, acting, performing, and singing. I never really got into makeup, which I kind of regret now, because now I feel like as a masculine person it would be cool if I knew how to do makeup things. But I did everything but that. And I think, especially being an actor, that is a huge part of why I was so femme. And those two things very much correlate. Because since I've come out as non-binary, it's a lot harder to get roles, and it's a lot harder to be involved with even community theater, let alone like professional stuff, because people aren't really looking for what I am, which is very hard. And sometimes they are, certainly, but the amount is so small compared to being a 20-something female performer, which is, there's cast lists out, and they're looking for people. It usually says male or female, and it almost never says like, oh, it can be any gender, or we're looking for someone who's androgynous. It almost never says that. So I haven't really been acting as much as I want to be acting, and I'd acted a lot in high school, and I got a lot of like female roles, and I loved that, and it's something that I still kind of grieve now. That part of my performance and my identity has changed. My voice has deepened a lot too. I used to be in a lot of like musicals as like the female lead, and sing a lot of like female musical theater songs that were in a much higher register, which now I can certainly still sing in a different register, but it's just a whole different world. It's a whole thing. That's the main thing I've had to grieve, I think, with my transition, is that it's just a change. It's just a difference of where things have gone and what kind of roles I like playing now and who I want to be. Actually, a couple years ago, 2 years ago, right before the pandemic, I got cast in a play, an amazing play, called Dear Baby, and it was about all these different mothers of babies, pregnant people, and I played a pregnant 19-year-old girl, and I wore like a fake belly. I had like one of my old like pink dresses on. I had a headband on, and throughout the monologue I had in this short piece, I had to look into a mirror, and that was really wild to me because I thought, this will be easy. I'm an actor, I know how to act, why would this be any different? And then that was kind of when I realized what acting dysphoria felt like. And that really opened my eyes a lot because the play was great, and like all these different snippets and all these different monologues, they're wonderful, but looking at myself and playing a woman, playing a pregnant woman, was very disorienting. It was very uncomfortable. It like got under my skin, and I was just so viscerally aware of it. And that really changed my perspective on just my acting in general and the roles that I take. I came out as non-binary pretty casually to most people in my life. I came out to my parents through a stand-up comedy show. Not even me speaking, but just the host introduced me with they, them pronouns. Our next comic, they're from Kitchener-Waterloo, they, etc., etc. And then after the show, my parents asked me about it. They were like, do you use they, them pronouns? And I was just like, yeah. And that was how I came out to my parents. I don't think I even officially came out to my siblings. I think it was kind of just like a slow build thing. Most of my friends in my life also, it was something slowly that developed over time. And then when I wanted to come out to people like on social media more, and I wanted to really definitively be like, I use they, them pronouns, I am genderqueer, I'm non-binary. I made a video with my sisters. My mom filmed it, which was great. And we got really into it because we're a very theatrical, dramatic family.
Looks like they're ready to come out. Ah, yes, they're perfect. I'm genderqueer. I use they, them pronouns.
And my sisters come on, they ring bells and they are cheering and hug me, which I really like a lot. And even talking about it's making me feel very full-hearted. And I still think that joke is hilarious. They're ready to come out. It's, as a baker, as a comedian, as a trans person, it all just perfectly coalesced. Every year around Groundhog Day, I always see the meme, specifically on Twitter, of people being like, oh, like the groundhog is gonna come out, and then it's just like a little cartoon, and you see the groundhog peek its head up, and it goes, I'm gay! And then everyone's like, the groundhog came out, amazing! And I love that, and I see it every year, and each year I'm like, still comedy gold, still great. I think one of the challenges early on was feeling validated in my gender and who I was. I think a lot of trans people go through this, and specifically I feel like a lot of non-binary people go through a huge bout of imposter syndrome, wondering if they're taking up space in a community that they don't literally belong to, and I remember even before I realized myself that I was non-binary, I was in a group, for like a theater group workshop, and we went around and did names and pronouns, and the person next to me used they, them pronouns. And even before they said their pronouns, once we started saying pronouns and names, my immediate thought was, oh, I wish I could say they, them. I wish I could say they, them pronouns for myself. And I remember scolding myself in my brain, being like, okay, stop trying to be special, stop trying to take up space in a community that you don't belong to, and stop pretending to be marginalized. Like, you do not use they, them pronouns, so just like chill. And even saying that out loud now is hurtful and very hard to kind of realize that is what I was thinking. But there's things like that that have, I think, trailed throughout my entire life of me just scolding myself and not believing myself and assuming that I was in the wrong and I wasn't right for thinking these things. I also remember coming out to my friends and them not really understanding, them vaguely understanding but never using my pronouns. I think that was like a lot of the first year of me being non-binary, which was like hard, and thinking back on it, it's just like a very weird situation because I can't imagine my friends misgendering me now. I think another thing was talking to my grandparents as well. I think that's always a weird thing for a lot of trans people, for the most part. And I think more so the biggest thing for me was not socially transitioning, but medically transitioning. People had a lot of strong emotions about that. A lot of people in my life, a lot of friends, a lot of family members. Being on testosterone was a huge thing that most people were fine with and very supportive, and then others had a lot of trepidation, a lot of fear around that, a lot of fear that, you know, in their minds, they're like, well, this is just a phase, but now you're medically transitioning, so you'll never be able to go back. Even once you're done pretending to be this, you'll never be able to be like a woman again. And that was like a huge thing that family members had to kind of work through. And same with getting top surgery. That was, I think, the hugest thing was telling my grandparents that I was getting top surgery. That was like the biggest thing that I was so scared of. Mainly because both of them were just so scared of the idea of surgery in general, but also surgery that is not, in their eyes, life-threatening. They're like, well, you don't have to get this surgery. Why would you get it? You don't have to. You're not going to die if you don't get this surgery. Once, you know, it is life-saving surgery. And it's a huge thing. And it's something that not only is it life-saving surgery and anyone should be able to get it, but I've been thinking about it for 3, 4, 5 years. For a long time. I think another thing was also, the biggest thing that sticks with me now is, because I was homeschooled, I grew up with a lot of different homeschooling parents, I call them my homeschooling moms, and a lot of them have a really hard time using my pronouns. And that still really gets me. Because it's all these people that knew me so well and helped raise me, and I feel like they don't see me as I am now, not truly. And that's not to be poetic about it, but that's definitely the core feeling there. You know, there's all these very universal experiences, and not even universal experiences, but universally trans experiences. Well, even like I very much, especially because like I have a deeper voice, I dress very masculine, more and more I get clocked as like a man out in public. Like that's a huge thing for a lot of people to wrap their heads around. They're like, well, if you're non-binary, then why do you feel better looking like a man than looking like a woman? I'm gonna say this, it's like my new favorite thing that I came up with, not to brag. But it's the easiest way for me to describe my gender and my pronouns. She, her is like shoes that are too small, and he, him are like shoes that are too big, and they, them is shoes that fit. Because you can't walk and you can't even stand up in shoes that are too small. Shoes that are too big, you can put some socks in the toe, you can just tighten the laces a lot. You can do things with that. You can walk in shoes that are too big. But shoes that are too small, you cannot walk in those. Those are gonna like painfully hurt. They are going to be just awful for you. And that's like the easiest way that I can describe, even to myself, like how I react to those things. If someone accidentally uses he, him pronouns for me, like at the grocery store, for example, I'm always like, oh, nice, okay. Cool, because people rarely would use they, them pronouns with me if they were a stranger. If they did, that'd be amazing. But he, him is just so much better to me than she, her. For that reason, yeah. One of the joys of being trans, something that I really love about being trans, is being a person who exists in the world. And to explain that more, I work with a lot of young people. I really like working with youth and with teenagers and with children, and that's like one of my biggest joys in life. I really love that, and I really love working with specifically like queer youth. And even when I'm in an environment that's not queer specific, the queer kids find me, and that always feels really powerful, and I always feel very important and like I have a lot of responsibility when that happens. Even if I don't know if a kid is queer or not, if a kid is gender nonconforming in any way, if a kid is talking to me in a specific way, I can have these small things of, okay, you see some of yourself in me. And that feels crazy. That feels insane. And I love it as well. I love that I can be better for them. I feel like I can be my fullest self because it's not just for me, it's for so many other people. And not even youth. Like, I feel like I know a lot of people my own age or older who have talked to me about queer and trans things. I get people who reach out to me almost every week who I know as acquaintance or like an old friend or a complete stranger who ask me questions about being non-binary, about being trans, because they're questioning or their family member has come out. They look for resources, they look for like media recommendations, and that feels amazing. And I feel like I have a purpose through that. Being queer and trans is my favorite thing about me. And I always want people to be excited when they come out to me. That's like my biggest goal in life, I think, is when someone's excited to come out to me, I know that like, okay, well that's it. Like they may have felt nervous coming out to these other people, but they felt excited to come out to me. They couldn't wait. And that's a feeling that we don't get to feel that often. So I really am very honored and glad to be that person for people. More genderful and also with less gender. I think it's something that changes so drastically. Year to year, but also decade to decade. Country to country, region to region. Gender can be so many different things, and it has been so many different things, and I'm excited to see where it goes, and I'm not sure where it will. I think a lot more people will start using they, them pronouns. Not even necessarily for themselves, but when they don't know someone. And I feel like I'm already starting to see that with a lot of cis people I know who automatically go to they, them if they're talking about someone they don't know. And I think that's really interesting, like how our language is changing around that. And I think people are more able to find themselves and find titles that fit them, but also find ways that they can express themselves if they don't want a label or an identity necessarily. A lot more freedom around that. That's where I see the future. I would really love to be continuing to do art, continue to be an actor, a theater creator, a comedian. I really love making trans people laugh and making jokes about being trans, and it shows kind of the joys of being trans, that it doesn't just show us as tragic beings. I think most media portrays us as our most tragic and heartbreaking parts, and doesn't even touch on all the joy that exists within our community and within ourselves. So I think I see myself continuing to do comedy, continuing to build a community around me, no matter where I am, no matter where I end up. Building a strong community of people who laugh and tell stories. The thing I want people to hear is you are allowed. You're allowed. You're allowed to be trans, you're allowed to be queer, you're allowed to use whatever pronouns you want. You have full autonomy over that, and you can just do it. And I feel like if someone had told me that, I would have come out a lot earlier and realized a lot of things about myself a lot sooner. But you're just allowed to do whatever you want, as long as you're not hurting other people. But especially with your own gender, you're allowed to do whatever you want, so do it. Yeah, Kez is giving you permission. You have permission. And explore. Feel free to explore. Take a lot of the pressure off yourself. Take a lot of the weight off yourself. You hold yourself to a very high standard, and you don't have to. I think allow yourself to experiment and to change, and don't feel like you have to be one thing or another thing. I often, even just alone in my room, try on dresses and try on other things that make me feel very full of gender and very heightened gender. And I love it. And sometimes I don't love it. Sometimes I'm like, okay, get this off of me right now. I can't wear this. But just allowing myself to just play around with whatever I want and explore whatever I want has been the biggest gate that I've kind of opened for myself.